What's going on, guys? Big Cloud here, back again with another video. Alright, so you guys already know it is the weekend. I know a lot of you guys are pretty much gaming like yours truly, so I figured I'd hit you guys with a quick video and then let you guys go on about your day. Obviously, you know me, I like to definitely entertain you guys the best way I can, so hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. One particular thing a lot of us are talking about with PlayStation 5 is resolution, and a lot of people are definitely bringing up like crazy resolutions like 8K. Now, granted, Mark Cerny did list 8K in his actual specifications breakdown along with ray tracing, and a lot of people are really taking this out of context. So we're definitely going to talk about that for sure. But if you want to see an extended talk about that, definitely check out the RGT podcast from this or last week. Pretty much, we pretty much had a good conversation about that, and pretty much broke it down for you guys overall. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that as well. All right. Without further ado, let's go ahead and start today's video. You know, as we go for the 9th generation consoles, even though we're in the 8th gen and we get more and more excited for 9th gen, I gotta admit though, the 7th generation of consoles was probably one of the most confusing times for me as a gamer. Sony Computer Entertainment went with the power narrative for the first time in years for their particular console. Sony usually focused on simplicity and just pretty much, involved the player more when it came with their games at the time. But instead, they went with the power narrative because I guess they feared the competition, or they wanted to stand out more over the competition. During this time, Microsoft was out in the market with their first successor to the Xbox One, which was the 360, and the 360 had received very well received reviews. Not only was it doing well, it was selling well, but it was being received well by gamers. Xbox Live was going to be a thing, and people were excited for Xbox Live at the time. With PlayStation 3, when Sony launched it at $600 and pretty much didn't deliver anything else on the front. Now, granted, at the start of the generation with the PlayStation 3, they did have a few perks that a lot of people want for PS5. For example, it had true backwards compatibility. The PlayStation 3 supported pretty much every memory card you can think of in the base model. And on top of all that, the PlayStation 3 did have a very good CPU, which is something that we are missing in the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X as of right now. The PlayStation 3 relied on a cell architecture. The cell processor ended up being a gift and a curse going down the road. The problem with the cell architecture is powerful. You can get great visuals and even more great visuals to this day, especially if you have a good GPU. Unfortunately, the problem with the cell architecture is that the conversion of your games and development of your games takes longer because it's difficult to optimize and get the true power out of. It seemed like only a few developers mastered the cell architecture last generation. One particular one was the first, and that was Hideo Kojima. Hideo Kojima pretty much mastered the PS3 cell architecture when he first gave you a glimpse of his game, which was Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. And many people consider Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots one of the best entries in the series. After that, we had Naughty Dog step to the plate, and Naughty Dog started to deliver with their games. Their first entry was Uncharted. Uncharted did well for the first time. And then pretty much they blew us away with Uncharted 2 and, of course, Uncharted 3 as they continued. Games did get better for PlayStation 3, but many people can argue that the PlayStation 3 had probably one of the worst starts for any console in a long, long time. PlayStation 3 was $600. The games they had at the start weren't really that appealing. I mean, there was Mobile Suit Gundam Crossfire, which looked abysmal. They had games like Lair, which looked beautiful in the graphical department, but unfortunately it sucked when it came to the controls. They focused more on the gimmick with Lair. I thought Lair had potential to be something good, but unfortunately they kind of ruined the mode for me with the fact that you had to use your controller to literally like move it around and do the 6-axis controls. The 6-axis controls were cool as a gimmick, but they weren't really something to really put your console behind. It really wasn't. And you can continue down the list. There was a lot of games on there that just weren't really great. There was one game, however, that did kind of save them for a time, but many people still argued that it wasn't enough. And that was Resistance Fallen Man. Resistance Fallen Man was actually really, really well done, and it ended up sparking a franchise that many people still want another sequel to. Again, all this stuff was added together for them, but it wasn't really the greatest. Now, as time progressed, again, games got better and better and better, and I would say games still were kind of slow in terms of releasing when it came to the first-party catalog, which they definitely addressed with the PlayStation 4, but you kind of can definitely get what I'm coming from. PlayStation 3 did have a lot of problems in the end that ended up like hurting it in the long run. The price point, the terrible development times, etc., etc. All these things weren't really the greatest for Sony at the time, but they definitely learned a valuable lesson, and that's what gets us into this generation, the 8th generation. Alright, so the big jump from the PlayStation 3 to the PS4. Now, arguably, we can go with the basic right here. One of the big differences between the PS3 generation and now the PS4 was Sony itself. Instead of Sony going the typical route of releasing a powerful system without even caring about the possibility of the system being hard to develop for, Sony decided to backtrack and actually go straight to the developers. When they went to the developers back during the production of the PS4, they basically asked them, what is it that you want in the next gen platform? And that's what they delivered. And the PS4 ended up being the first ever game console that was made by game developers for game developers. And this automatically, pretty much went well for Sony in the long run, with any developers jumping on board, with numerous third-party developers supporting it day one, everybody looking at Sony in a different light, because Sony pretty much is, delivering and catering to the developers for a change. As time progressed, we noticed that there was more to the PS4 than, meets the eye. Number one of the bigger differences, especially when it came to hardware, was the choice in terms of the specifications. The PlayStation 3 went with cell architecture, and again, cell architecture was hard to develop for, like I just mentioned earlier, and instead they went with x86 for the PS4. x86 architecture immediately made the PS4 a PC in the box, and this was by far the easiest transition for developers to make their games for the PS4, and even PC game developers making their games for the console. We saw that when they showed off Diablo 3 for PS4 at the actual February 20th conference, and time went on. Another fun note, Sony went with just your typical GPU and CPU instead of something complex like they did with the PlayStation 3. They went with simplicity, and that paid off for them in the long run with the PS4. Things have definitely changed drastically since then. We've had quite a bit of new investments from PlayStation since we've gotten closer to PlayStation 5. We got PlayStation VR, which took off and did very, very well, sold over 4 million units worldwide. We know for a fact that Sony Computer Entertainment continues to improve with their gaming studios and continues with their investments as we go forward through the years. Now, one thing I will say too, though, this generation has been a mixed bag when it comes to certain things. Now, first, the power narrative has been a subject of many debates. It has been a subject of just silly arguments here on the internet. It really has. When you look at the PlayStation, Sony did come out with a new piece of hardware during the middle of this generation, and that was the PlayStation 4 Pro. PlayStation 4 Pro is Sony's answer to pretty much those users who have 4K displays and who can't use a basic PS4 to play their games on their 4K display. A lot of people look at the PS4 Pro as a competitor to the Xbox One X. The Xbox One X was actually built in mind to take full advantage of true 4K and actually have, a few other things working for them, such as performance modes, etc. That's what Microsoft built the Xbox One X for. Sony, on the other hand, actually built the PS4 Pro to not only take advantage of your 4K display, but it was also made to take advantage of VR. PlayStation VR possibly couldn't have worked with your standard PS4, so therefore they had to launch a beefier hardware system for the VR headset. And again, You know, a lot of people are torn between this. Some people believe, no, it's not like that. I don't think so. I think it was an answer to Microsoft, and it wasn't. Me personally, I'm just looking at it the way it is. It wasn't really an answer to Microsoft's console, especially when you look at the upgrades. The only thing that changed for the PS4 Pro compared to the PS4 was just the GPU. That's all they did. And after that, you notice that there were some things that Sony did throw in there to improve games, such as the Rapid Pack Math from Vega. They offered that in PS4 Pro. They have the fact that they have boost mode in PS4 Pro, which does something. It does okay, I guess, and a few other things. But that's basically what Sony did with PSVR. PSVR was there as an option, and it's still here. But one thing I will say that was cool about PSVR is that it did show that Sony can deliver a 4K image and a cool image through different means. Instead of Sony going all out and investing in a new piece of hardware like Microsoft did with the Xbox One X, Sony went and actually did a little bit of trickery with the PlayStation 4 Pro. Instead of focusing on true 4K, they focused on trickery through checkerboard rendering. Checkerboard rendering allows Sony to actually take an image that is 1080p and actually upscale it to the 4K display and give you a better picture overall through different lighting techniques that they're using through checkerboard rendering. And this is pretty interesting too, as well. It was pretty interesting when we first saw it. And now we gotten pretty accustomed to it as we moved on. One of the first demos they showed was Spider-Man. I remember when Spider-Man was first showing this, I was like, wow, it looks amazing. For Spider-Man on the PS4 and the basic one, the standard one, it still looks good to this day. It looks great. But on PS4 Pro, it looks even better with stunning visuals and just like the textures in the suit and the lighting. All these things add more immersion to the character, and that's what Sony focused on with checkerboard rendering. It's a cool technique that adds more to the character, and overall, it can add more to a scene. That's what Sony focused on, though, especially in games in Horizon Zero Dawn and Detroit Become Human, you name it. All these games look even better with this. So I think it's pretty obvious to see what exactly is going to happen with PS5 as we get closer and closer to the actual launch. And obviously the launch, especially when it's being hinted for 2020, the reveal is most certainly around the corner and more than likely going to be at PSX. So definitely keep your eyes open. So without further ado, let's get into the PlayStation 5. Shall we? So the PS5 now. This was actually weird. The way Sony announced the PS5 specifications was very weird. Obviously, whenever we get any information from a piece of like from a hardware perspective from a company, they will have a special conference dedicated to it, and we will be watching it live, you know, amongst each other. Unfortunately, Sony didn't go that route with the PlayStation 5. Instead, what they did was they took pretty much a few details from a interview that Mark Cerny did with The Wired and basically posted that on their actual Twitter. And on their actual Twitter, we got some pretty interesting specifications for the PlayStation 5. We know for a fact that Sony is indeed going to be using a Zen 2 processor. That's from AMD. So they are going to be using AMD Zen 2 processor. More than likely, it's the Gonzalo chip. It's a microprocessor. That's what they're going to be using. And also, they're going to be using a Navi GPU. Another thing that Sony's going to be doing with the PlayStation 5, which is a drastic upgrade from the PS3 and even the PS4, is an SSD. They're going to be using special SSDs for the PlayStation 5. And since they're going this route, they even showed off a model where they talked about the dev kit in perspective when it was running Spider-Man on the PS5 versus that of the PS4 Pro. On PS4 Pro, Spider-Man, you know, when you launch something simple like a the fast travel speed takes up to 17 seconds for you to get from point A to point B in the game. On the PlayStation 5, it takes you 0.2 seconds. That is insanely fast for a console. Another thing that this also answers for gaming for like games in general is when you launch a game on PS4 or Xbox One, you notice how they'll show you a artwork in the background first, and then you have to wait and you see the black screen, and then it goes to the game. This will be a thing of the past with PlayStation 5. As soon as you pretty much hit the start button on a game, you'll be right at the game at the snap of a finger. You'll be there, and you'll be right there enjoying your experience. That's a big improvement for games. Another thing is that, you know, it would improve the smoothness of the game, like texture pop-ins and all that. All that stuff will be smooth with the inclusion of an SSD, a simple transition. This is what a big upgrade looks like. This is great. This is a good thing from Sony going further when it comes to the PS5. Another thing that we can take into account from the PS5 is that when you look at the PS4, a lot of games, even though we thought we were going to get a crazy upgrade from PS3 to PS4, a lot of games were still running at 30 frames per second. Something tells me Sony's going to deliver 60 frames per second, no problem, with the PS5 going as soon as we get it. Especially with them talking about already having performance increases on PS4 titles. Another thing that pretty much confirms for me is that they're probably going to have enhanced titles like they do on the Xbox One X. The Xbox One X has enhanced titles, so it makes sense for Sony to follow suit and go back and actually tinker with some old PS4 titles. For example, Until Dawn can get a 60 frames per second boost and have the game looking even more immersive, even though it looks great to this day. You know, Uncharted 4 can get a 60 frames per second boost, maybe even 4K if they want to go that route. Again, the options are there. And we can also count the fact that Sony will most likely still continue to use checkerboard rendering techniques, since Mark Cerny had 8K listed as a possibility for the console. So 8K most likely will be a thing, but they're going to do it through different means. I don't think it's going to be running natively in 8K. What it's going to be is just a 4K image, upscale. That's what they're going to be doing. The big advantage that you'll probably get for PS5 will be the fact that 4K as a whole will be mastered, and I can say the same thing for Xbox. 4K will be mastered without a doubt, and then they'll just focus on other means to get you an 8K image if they see fit. But right at the start of the generation, it should be simple. 4K 60, if that's possible, should be the main priority for next gen consoles without a doubt. Hell, even 1440p at 60 frames per second will be a valuable option. Let's say they give you an option to have a performance mode and a visual mode on PS5. I would take the performance mode over the visual mode. I would take 1440p at 60 frames per second locked on all games if that would mean to give me a better experience on PS4. Or PS5, I'm sorry. So that's another good thing to take into account. So there's a lot of things here. We know for a fact that PSVR is getting a upgrade. A lot of things are getting upgraded. A lot of things are getting changed. Possibly we're going to get a new social hub for the PlayStation 5 and the way they go about it with the fringe that you may know. They might revamp the PSN store or go with a new way on the PlayStation menu when you get your console of basically telling you and give you a heads up on the top, listed games or on the top games that are coming out soon, especially like events for like PlayStation experiences. Because we know Sony's doing the State of Play events, which is basically Nintendo Direct. So since Sony's going Nintendo Direct style, they will need to keep you informed. And that's a cool way to keep you informed for PlayStation events. Just have a nice little message come on your screen and go, hey, did you know that we're going to be live on this particular date? Come join us at this particular time. Those things. Lots of improvements I see coming for PS5, and I'm very, very excited. And that's just a small little things I know for a fact. I just noticed, small things. But again, many more things are to come, and of course we gotta wait to the actual reveal, which would most certainly be this year, as many outlets are saying a 2020 release. So yes, I would definitely say PS5 will be revealed this year, probably at PSX. That's probably why I put my money on, since Sony's not physically going to be at E3 this year. But who knows, Sony might do something else for E3. They might have another State of Play conference and actually show off their games that are going to come out for 2019, like to the end of 2019 and 2020, and then they'll go straight into PS5 later on after that at PSX. So that's just my theory. All right, so that pretty much brings us to the end of this video. Oh man, I hope this one didn't drag out as long as possible, but I definitely wanted to include as much as I possibly could. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, definitely share it around. I do appreciate it. And to all the new people who are here that might see this video, hit that subscribe button. Definitely consider hitting that subscribe button. Stick with your boy. And I'll see you guys later for another upload. And make sure that bell icon is ticked so you never miss another one. I want to say thank you guys again for everybody who showed up to the RGD podcast, which was yesterday. If you missed it, definitely go give it a listen. We had a great time talking with you guys. PS5 news, all that jazz. It was just a great discussion overall and just tons of fun. We'll see you guys on the next episode of that, and I will see you guys on the next upload. This is Big Cloud, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm signing out. Later.